starts with this film. When I was very little, the first time I saw the film of Star Wars, I was shocked by the technologies and the imaginations that's carried out in this film. Holoportation being one of the most important things of them. This is just so cool. It's such a cool idea that people can communicate in such a way, even though they are galaxies afar. And this topic is especially relevant to me because as a foreign student who came to the United States, my family's parents, friends are all thousands of miles away. Holoportation is just such a cool thing that can connect people together, even though they are physically apart. So 4 years ago, when I first joined the lab, started doing research on computer graphics and visions, I was dreamed of if I could contribute to this and really make this happen in the near future. As of today, though holoportation is still a pity that it's still not deployed yet, we made considerably contributions and progress towards it. And that is mostly on the topics of human digitization in virtual human. That is the key component in this whole pipeline, is that we would like to reconstruct an avatar from our capture system. And today, I'm thrilled to share with you my work with regard to human digitizations that could possibly make this happen in the very near future. It is not just about the future. Human digitization has already been a very popular and very demanding field, even as of today. There are numerous applications that's already going on, and there are many more applications to be developed once certain technologies is mature enough for deployment. And because it's huge needs, both academia and industry people have already put a lot of resources and efforts into researching how to virtualize humans, how to digitizing humans into an avatar. And this has already gained a lot of achievements in the film industry. We've already seen those high quality, high fidelity 3D scans that's put into those visual effects, and they're super good. So why are we still doing it now? This is because usually those capture systems are gigantic. They either require a lot of equipment, a lot of maintenance, occupy a large space, or they are simply just too expensive or too unreliable to deploy inside of our home. But as we approach into 2020s, personal devices has been common in our daily life. Everyone has their cell phones, and every cell phone has a camera. And social media has been playing an increasingly important role in our daily life. Social media has already been reshaping our society. In this era, it is crucial and important that we can have this fancy technology of human digitization, which was previously only accessible to professionals. We would like to make them accessible to everyone, to every end user, and really have everyone benefit from the advances of technologies we are developing. And this topic is especially relevant nowadays, as we are all quarantined at home, locked down at home, and everyone is just so eager to get out, to get reconnected to society. Even though we cannot physically getting out, AR and VR in recent years could serve as the very important application to help reconnect people back together. And human digitization, especially human digitization accessible to everyone, will play a very important role in it. And thus, we are so eager to study how can we achieve this using only home available devices. The first time I came to USC, when I had my first discussion with Hao Li of what topic I would be choosing and what I could possibly be presenting after 4 years, 5 years of my defense, I was dreaming of a device, a system that you can simply put a camera in front of me, and while I'm standing here, I can capture myself and holoportate myself into a virtual environment like this lecture room so that I can do my final defense here. And here we are. And I just can't wait to share with you the procedures, the work, the research we have done in making this happen. In this presentation, I will briefly go over a full pipeline that recreates an avatar from only sparse input of images. And the pipeline consists of 3 stages. The first stage is pre-processing. That will pre-process our captured data from our cameras, and we can obtain organized data for later use. The second stage is reconstruction. It's where we jump from 2D input data to 3D geometries and textures. The last stage is avatar creation. We incorporate human modeling into our reconstructions, and such so our results can be used into workflows and pipelines of concurrent and future applications. This presentation will last about half an hour, and I hope you really enjoy it. After this presentation, you will see how we can take out a cell phone, take a photo, and turn that photo into an avatar with ease. So let's begin with taking a photo. Now, everyone has their cell phones, and the signals inside of those sensors are originally electric signals, where we need an image processing algorithm to turn them into the format that computers can accept, are called the images. There are already many existing image processing tools that's already there. Many are already built into our cameras. And in the processing of our data, we would like to process our data in a neat way that they are normalized and organized, so that when we connect it to a later approach, it will cause less problems with the extraction pipeline. So we do image processing, and we utilize many existing image processing tools, such as color balancing, such as camera calibration, or more recently, such as background segmentations. This work has already been well started, well established, and has already been deployed into a robust solution. And we just take advantage of the existing processing tools to process our raw data from the camera. But still, during our image processing, there's still one thing that really annoyed us, and that is the perspective distortion. Perspective distortion is caused by varying distances from the camera to the object. And this is mostly common in human-related photos, especially in portraits, because human-related photos are usually taken within a short distance. Now, perspective distortion is not necessarily, perspective distortion is not necessarily, perspective distortion is not necessarily an artifact, but rather an effect of the photo geometry. However, if we have a very perspective distorted image, when we connect it to some existing reconstruction pipeline, it will greatly affect or harm the quality of the reconstruction. And that's just so during this processing stage, we would like to try our best to overcome this distortion and try our best to recover the image to a less distorted one. We turn our heads to a data-driven approach and begin by collecting our data. Thanks to the huge collections of 3D facial scans from ICT, we were able to render a lot of images with all kinds of variations from our scan to mimic all kinds of situations and perspectives. We also developed this clever tool that can capture portraits from varying distances at the same time to produce real-world photos for our reference. After getting our data, we design our network, which is a cascade network consists of 2 parts that correct the distortions for portraits. Now, we purposely designed the network to be 2 parts in comparison to many concurrent and ongoing work that trend in end-to-end fashion, which directly output a less distorted image from a network. The first part of our network takes in the distorted image, produces an optic flow, and we use that optic flow to guide the morphing, the translate of the original image to a less distorted one. Now, of course, during this image-based manipulation, there will be artifacts. And due to the distortion, if the boundary area on the facial region, such as hair or ears, cannot be seen in the original image, they cannot be seen in the corrected image either, only by image manipulation. And then that's why we need a second network. That's a refinement network, takes in the intermediate distorted corrected image and fix the artifacts and fill in the holes and the missing regions. The reason why we did in this cascaded way is because that we are still in the image pre-processing stage. We would want to try our best to preserve the original structure and features from the input image. And such so, by using a flow-based traditional image manipulation method, we kept the original regions from the original image at best, and it is not limited to the resolutions of the image, which the raw captured image are usually of higher resolution than a network could comfortably accept. And that is our network. And we apply our network to correct portraits. Our network, as we mentioned, produces the optic flow, correct the image using that flow, and then complete the missing parts and fix the artifacts.
Hello.
Pardon?
Hello.
Pardon? Is that hello?
Hello, this is your Westwood Ralph Pharmacy.
Our results were able to our network were able to extract a plausible results that is comparable to the state of art, and our results can be applied to any arbitrary input images that better normalize it. At this stage, it completes our image processing pipeline that we process the raw input from the cameras for the better later use. And we can assume after this, we have access to well-normalized, well-lighted images of less perspective or free of perspective distortions. Since our data are already organized and normalized, it is time to dive into how can we produce something from this 2D data? How do we extract 3D from 2D? And that leads us to the second chapter of reconstruction. Now, in order to make this full pipeline work, especially in order to make this reconstruction pipeline accessible to everyone, one key component is to really reduce the requirements of equipment of traditional reconstruction systems. Traditional reconstruction system usually involves a lot of cameras because they are relying on stereo matching. And the stereo matching requires correspondences between pairs of images. However, in a sparse setup, such as if we only have 4 views, there is just almost impossible to find overlaps between images. In most families, we might be able to find out 4 cameras, 3 cameras, but we just cannot gather hundreds of cameras inside of the living room. So we really want to study how can we give plausible results from only sparse views, like from only 4 views. So how can we do that? Traditional method cannot work in this scenario. So we turn our heads again to data-driven approaches. But how can we design a network that handles this scenario? We turn our heads to a traditional algorithm called visual hole. Visual hole is rather very straightforward. It tries to carve out the reconstructed space with regard to the segmentation tasks from each multi-view. And as you can see from this image, it could work for only 4 views. It can produce a completed mesh that is of plausible human shape, though its reconstruction quality is limited by the limitation of views and the limitation of the image feature it uses, which is the silhouette. What's more is that the reconstruction pipeline of visual hole can be seen as the implicit representation of the occupancy of points inside of the 3D space by looking at its silhouettes. And when it comes to explicitly extracting the mesh, we use isosurface extraction method like margin cubes, which are already been widely developed and established. The whole extraction pipeline is simple, easy to implement, and can be fully parallel. And also this implicit representation of visual hole is extremely friendly towards deep learning. It's easy to implement in deep learning. And that implies us to augment the traditional visual hole algorithm using deep learning. So we kept the whole extraction pipeline as is. We only augmented it by replacing the hard-coded, human-specified algorithms, features, and logics from the traditional algorithm, replace them with deep neural networks. And we aim at learning an algorithm implicitly within those networks. So specifically, we replace the image feature extractor using a convolutional neural network instead of just silhouettes. We replace the discriminator of the occupancy by using a multi-layer fully collected neural network that takes in the projected image features from each of the view and tell the occupancy of the 3D point in the space. By doing so, we effectively transform the original pipeline into a deep learning one, but still keeps the whole extraction pipeline neat and as usual. And so we divide our network and it's ready for training. In order to train such a network, we need good training data that has 3D ground truth and rendered 2D images. Now, before our work, good 3D data of close to humans are really hard to find. Because this is rather a less studied area, it was difficult, and 3D data themselves are hard to obtain, even as of nowadays. So we obtained some help from the film industry. We acquired hundreds of 3D scans that were previously used in the film industry. Those are of super high quality, super high details with textures. They're designed for the render engine, and they're scanned from real persons. And then we carefully design our render engine to try to render them as realistic as possible, that one cannot even simply tell whether they are synthesized or not. We render them for huge variations of environments, and we use this as our training data. With the support of this good data, we were able to produce some very plausible results as expected. The reason why I say as expected is because as we augment our network based on visual Hall, we expect our results to be at least better than visual Hall. Because in the worst case, the network will just simply fall back to learn a legacy visual Hall algorithm. So the result cannot be worse than visual Hall. Since the visual Hall algorithm can already give you a plausible general human shape, that's why we had such a confidence that this will work. And the results turns out pretty good. It was the state of art at the time where was almost impossible to reconstruct a closed template-free with highly detailed meshes from only a few views. And traditional studio matching method will simply fail here by not being able to complete the reconstruction. So the results of Deep Visual Hall really encouraged us and pushed us forward to think what our next step would be. And it is very clear, single view reconstructions. Because it is always easier that you set up only one camera compared to a few cameras, and you do not need to do calibrations for only a single camera. However, as we are decreasing the number to single view, the problem becomes fundamentally different. Because single view reconstruction is itself a yield post problem. You just cannot tell what the backside look like. It is non-deterministic. So almost no traditional method could really work with single view reconstruction. So people has come up a lot of methods that overcome this limitation of very constrained input. Some tried to fit a template model onto the input image. And as of today, the fitting could be really of high quality. However, template-based model sometimes cannot represent the huge variations of the geometry of human-related data because of their constrained topology. Some people turn to data-driven approaches because data-driven approaches can really infer the missing parts and can really overcome the limitations of the inputs. However, at the time when this method was developed, most people were using voxel-based representations to represent the geometry. And voxels are really costly, less efficient, and suffers from the limitation of the resolutions. And they're really hard to train. Looking back at our deep visual Hall algorithm, it directly produces the shape without relying on template. It has the implicit nature that does not require a voxel inside of network. It has all the good features that we want to use to develop our next procedure. And such so, we looked into how can we adapt our previous reconstruction pipeline for single view. Now, deep visual Hall could not be applied directly here because of the nature of single view reconstruction, that the network just cannot tell the difference for points that lines alongside the same line of sight from the input image, because they were projected at exactly the same image positions. By only looking at the image feature, network cannot tell the difference. However, if we train the network and let the network tell the difference between those points, we expect the network with good supervision could learn the differences of varying points, even though they are from the same pixel of the image. And that's how we introduced this very simple solution, adding the step-spiced Z feature in addition to our pixel-wise image feature. And by doing that, deep visual hall network can be directly applied to single view extractions. What's more, at this stage, when we take a look back what we have already done here, a neural network is generally used to represent a function over its input. And in this specific case, it represents a function in the 3D space that is related to the input images. And so we do not have to necessarily constrain our network to be only producing occupancy. We can generalize our network to produce any functions that's associated with the 3D space. And that's how we come to this and consolidate our idea, and we give it a name, PyFu, Pixel Aligned Implicit Function, which is a general approach, a general representation with a deep learning basis that represents the relation between 3D functions and 2D inputs. And thanks to this PyFu representation, we were not only able to reextract the geometry from a single input image, just like what we did for deep visual hall, we were also able to predict the parameters for all the points in our reextraction. For instance, we can finally colorize our reextractions and get a full reextracted mesh with texture. And the reextraction looks promising. At the time when PyFu was proposed, it was clearly the state of art of the year. And as of today, we were excited to see that many follow-up works based on or related to PyFu has really pushed the boundary of full-body human digitizations in this field. So up till now, we proposed a general reconstruction framework called PyFu. It can give you high-quality reconstructions while still being very efficient and easy to train. And the design itself is very simple and can be modularized. It could serve as a baseline or serve as the key component into many other methods. And we are excited to see that many has already adopted our idea and pushed forward their own researches. We are also very lucky and proud that we are in this trend that people in 3D learning area are gradually transforming from using voxel representation to implicit representation. And as of today, implicit representation has become the most common, most used, and usually state-of-art representation method when it comes to using deep learning in 3D graphics. And we are super proud that this work has contributed to this community. Now, as we mentioned, PyFu was rather a generic reconstruction pipeline. It could give you plausible results, but it does not necessarily require you to reconstruct only on humans. But since we are dealing with digitization of humans, can we take advantage of knowing there's a human there? Can we take advantage of the human priors and further improve our results based on our previous PyFu reconstruction framework? On the other hand, we really have to take a look at the applications as the needs from the industry, from what people really need from our research. After PyFu was released, we received a lot of messages from artists, and they're asking us whether we can use the extracted result from PyFu in their workflow. Well, it could not simply be directly used because in their workflow, they require something called an avatar. And an avatar is not just about the shape, the texture. It is also about a rig of the shape and texture. And using that rig, artists could easily animate, pose, manipulate, or tweak the shape to suit his or her workflow and to use them in the film, animation, or game industry. This is what people wanted. So how did people get avatars before? So most work beforehand produced an avatar based on a previous reconstruction. So basically, they take the reconstruction result, for instance, PyFood results as input, and I use the method called auto-rigging to automatically rig that mesh, that shape, to convert it into an animatable avatar. Well, even though many auto-rigging methods have already been widely used, it certainly has some constraints, and the most constraints is regard to the input. The scans have to be of high quality, of less noise, and it usually requires the scan to be a certain pose, for instance, the A pose or T pose. When it comes to generally poses and generally cases, sometimes auto-rigging can be really hard due to the topology changes in those shapes. So instead of directly rigging our PyFood reconstructions and try to get an avatar from that, we think out of the box. Because all our methods are heavily deep learning based, and deep learning tends to trend in an end-to-end fashion. Can we do something? Can we propose a framework that directly reconstructs something in the avatar space, in the canonical space? That's something that's always standing still in the pose, rigged, in exactly the format that everyone desires in their workflow. In order to do that, we still rely on our previous reconstruction pipeline. And because of the pixel-aligned nature of PyFood, we'll have to find out a way to associate a correspondence, a mapping from the reconstruction space to the input image space. And such so we can know where the pixel-aligned feature of the reconstruction space are. So how can we do that? Up till now, as we dive into reconstructing in the canonical space, it is actually that we are representing something using a human model in this canonical space. So unavoidably, we would have to take the advantage of human prior. And such so, we seek the help of a concurrent set of artwork. We simply use a concurrent set of artwork of fitting a template model onto the input images. We take them as is since they were already developed very robust. Following this work, even though they will only be able to reconstruct based on a template, we can work something out from those templates. Their template-based nature are already an avatar, which can be put back into the canonical space. So with regard to this template, we already have a mapping between the template. Now it comes to define the mappings on arbitrary points inside of that reconstruction space. So how should we do that? Well, the approach is very easy. We just, for any arbitrary point in the reconstruction space, we just look at its closest point on the template surface. And we associate the rigging parameters of that surface point onto the arbitrary point. And by doing so, we effectively densely rig the whole reconstruction area. And using that rigging, the whole reconstruction area can be animated towards the input image or towards any arbitrary poses given a sequence. Now, this rigging of reconstruction space actually gives us two advantages. First, it established a mapping from the canonical space, reconstruction space, to the input image, which we can directly use our previous proposed reconstruction pipeline. And that reconstruction pipeline would enable us to reconstruct something directly inside of a canonical space, a standing still, A-pose, normalized shape of a person, still with advantages of the high quality of shape and texture from PyFood. What's more, since by definition, we already rigged the whole reconstructed space, the reconstructed shape are reconstructed animation ready because they are reconstructed already rigged. So our result from the network, in addition to the shape and texture, is already a rigged avatar. That is a format that can be directly put into use in artist's workflow and could really encourage a lot of applications going on. And this is Arch, animatable reconstructions of close humans. And we were the first work able to reconstruct a high quality, high fidelity, template-free mesh, while still have the advantages of the template that is rigged. What's more, Arch really opens up a lot of more opportunities because its nature of reconstructing the canonical space. Throughout the years, the lab mates in-house lab in USC ICT, my colleagues, and all the people in this field have dedicated their work into researching, digitizing different human body parts in their own fields. My lab mate has developed so many algorithms. Many of them are state-of-art in each own field of digitization, such as facial reconstruction, hair reconstruction, torso reconstruction, and skeleton recovery. However, because they are designed in their specific region, once we want to get a complete digitization of human, once we want to get a full avatar with super high quality, we would want to find a way to combine all this together, to combine all the stresses of the research we have developed so far. And Arch could serve as a potential platform and baseline for doing that. Because it's reconstructing the canonical space, it's normalized and it's already rigged. It has the landmarks to guide where the faces are, where the hairs are, so that the art method could fit in place. Also, because of its deep learning nature, one can easily implement an end-to-end solution to fuse their own research effort into the Arch framework. And such so, Arch can be seen as a general approach of implicitly representing a human and could really benefit a lot of related researchers into this area. And that could be really potential to complete the final step of human digitization of really high quality, to complete the full pipeline of an avatar generation. And that brings us to the final part of this presentation, the future work. In addition to complete the digital avatar generation with all the methods, we would like also to point out that in this presentation, all the methods we discussed are all computed on the frame per frame basis. When it comes to videos, they simply treat videos as each individual images. Now, short video applications has been increasingly popular in social medias. And also, once we have video input, it somehow can overcome the limitations of sparse input, because in time frames, you just get more information. Especially for Arch, one can simply try to fuse the reconstruction results in the canonical space alongside the time frame. And that will be some very exciting follow-up work to study. And I believe it could greatly really improve our reconstruction pipelines thus far. On the other hand, the research of human digitization can be cool, but it can never be cool if it's not put into real world, into real products. We really need to study how we can push our research effort into real world, because keep in mind, our goal is to make this technology accessible to everyone, to have everyone benefit from the advances of technologies. So we need really to study of how to make our network generalized to arbitrary inputs, to in wide and corner cases. How can we apply our method to each individual applications? And on the other hand, how can we deploy our research effort into platform-specific programs that can be run on those individual devices and hopefully run in real time, which could really encourage a lot of real-time applications. We had already made several initial progresses by introducing a real-time reconstruction pipeline, just like what you have seen here. And there are many more to go. There are many more to still working on. If I'm lucky enough to graduate this year, I will continue work towards this part and dedicate myself into the research of human digitization, especially into making this available to end users, to really build products, applications that will benefit everyone, that will really help connect people better together, even they are physically separated. And that led us to the end of this presentation. Thank you so much. Thank you, Randy. Thank you for my community. Thanks my committee for coming. Thank you very much, Paul. And thank you everyone for attending this presentation. I wish you enjoyed it. And it's time for questions.
Thank you, Zheng. Very good. Yep. That was a great presentation. I would like to now give the committee the opportunity to ask questions or make follow-up comments to Zheng.
Zen?
Yep.
Yeah, this is very impressive. So now, so you said this, that the single view, like the volume reconstruction was really like a breakthrough. And So you said that is general, right? Not only to human. Now,
Not only non-human.
yeah. So I was just attending another defense in chemical engineering, and then they were using like a machine learning to look at the image of porous media, like a sand, stone, and then that predicted the property like a permeability and then so. And then they are very skeptical. Like so, I thought like these chemical engineering people, like computer graphics and CS, ICT people have a lot of nice algorithm like what you have, and then so maybe they can use it. So, but they were very skeptical. Like you do this like a human body and then so on, and then they think their structure is much more complicated. So
I see.
you think this can be applied to that kind of area? So this is like a porous material, like it's a lot of pore. And then that structure, like a geometry, fundamentally affect material property. So so you said that people is a very general, right? You think it is general enough to go to that kind of very weird geometry, or is there some like underlying assumption? Like
Yep.
so that only for that kind of like a class of structure it works. So
Yep.
yeah, generality of this pipe.
Yes, yes. So first, I would like to say that we did not really do a lot of tests of pipe on different kinds of data sets. When it is applied on humans, it worked pretty well. It's also mostly because the human shapes are sharing the same structures. When it is applied to arbitrary shapes, especially when those sophisticated shapes, it is actually expected to have some problems, and those are problems. That is what we would like to figure out. It cannot be. So I think the first thing we want to see is that we would like really to gather the data from the medical people, and we train the PyFu and related reconstruction work on them and see what the results would look like. It could be as expected, not as good as the human reconstruction, but that will give us an idea of where we need to improve. And on the other hand, PyFu being a generic reconstruction pipeline, it could, when it comes to sophisticated structures, and I can understand why people are kind of critical about that, because there is just no controls of the deep learning. You somehow relies on the network architecture and the training data to help you improve the generalization and the performance of network. Arch could be seen as an example of overcoming these limits. So because Arch was trained exclusively in the canonical space, it is actually much easier for the network to figure out things in this constrained space. So similar to ideas of Arch, I'm not really familiar with medical data, but I assume they share some similar structures, and many people would like to still have access to those structures, like some kind of kinematic structures or some kind of canonical spaces, like some set. And for example, for DNAs, like DNA are composed with certain units that share the same structure, and that is actually some information that we want to leverage on top of PyFu, just like what we did on Arch. So people in their individual area can contribute their own knowledge in their specific area and introduce certain constraints, either implicitly or explicitly, and design their model using the traditional way, but replace some of the geometry part using the PyFu architecture or using similar architectures, and they do not have to design a network that handles everything. They can use the handwork inside of some individual part that is really hard to craft by humans, and that could greatly improve the existing pipelines. And I think that is the way to go in this case.
Yeah, I'm sure that this material and the medical community can learn a lot from your work. Now, so your presentation was very, very impressive. So what kind of hardware and then software is required to do what you did? For example, in my class.
What was the question? How's
your presentation, like you are standing in front of your PowerPoint slide. What is required to do that in my class?
Okay, so as you can see, there's so during my presentation, I actually put my laptop there. So the viewpoint is rather similar. So there's a camera here. There's a webcam here. So we only use that single camera as input. And there's a desktop over here. So we run the real-time extraction pipeline in this desktop. It's real-time on this platform, but it's still not that real-time on personal devices. It's still costly, computational costly. And so that we can get a 3D extraction of myself. And we simply put, and that is basically an avatar of myself. And this is actually an application of the VR application using avatar. So I wrote a render engine that put my avatar inside of the virtual lecture room, and I just render the slides on back of the room.
I think at the time of this pandemic, probably you can immediately sell this technology to everybody.
Just to add one thing to Aichiro's comment, then maybe one thing you can do is you can create a website with a do-it-yourself thing.
Wow.
You can actually allow everyone to actually build their own system.
Yeah, indeed.
Then you'll be a superstar. Okay, thank you very much. That's all.
Stefanos, Remo, do you have questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So in the pipeline, you associate a very, very interesting, a very impressive presentation as well. In the pipeline, you associate a mapping from reconstruction space to image space. How sensitive is it to occlusions? So what happens if part of your body is hidden, or like your own, like you get out of the frame of the camera?
Okay, so the mapping is actually for a space-to-space mapping. So so the mapping is from the reconstruction space to the image space, where if the points alongside the same ray will be mapped to another point, to another set of points alongside the same ray. So there is actually not a occlusion concept here, but I can kind of get your idea that how we handle occlusions when, let's say, in the reconstruction space, there are multiple points that will be projected in the same image pixel. Is that what you want to ask?
Yeah.
How should we handle this case?
So when you do the mapping, right? So you have some points in image space, and then you you associate you link them to some point in the reconstruction space. But then what happens if like some of the points are like missing, right, in the image space?
Yep. Let me go back to that slide. So the mapping is actually not done in the image space; it's done in the 3D space. So let's say if we take a look at the right side, let me get the other one. If you take a look at the right side, the point P and Q are in the reconstruction space, and those P and Q are at the same positions from the input image. If the camera is shooting from the left side, and as you can see, even though those P and Qs are at the same image positions, there is still a way to map them in the 3D space and to tell the difference between them. And when the network takes in the features, it will take in the positions of P and Q in that reconstruction space, so that it could distinguish between P and Q.
I see.
Any follow on to that?
I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Remo, you have questions?
Maybe I can ask a question. So maybe, if correct me if I understand it incorrectly, but so you when you do this imaging with one camera, you basically have two sets of inputs. You use the image that you take with the camera, and then you use some topology of the object, right? Like that there's an arm has a bone, and the arm will always be there and doesn't go blob in and out. And that's what you could, when you transfer this to DNA, which you already mentioned, these would be the chemical bonds, right?
Yes, like a kinematic or canonical structure that you can like glue the network on top of it.
Can you say maybe a little more, how do you combine those two sets of parameters, the photo or the image and the topological information about the object?
Yes, so let's go back.
How do they get integrated?
Yep, let's still look into this. So it is integrated in an implicit way. So I think the easiest way of thinking of it is just trying to take let's say the pose feature and the image feature and just throw them into the network. But those features are just too different. They're totally different features. So I think a better way is that we actually represent our how should I say it? This way. Is that we actually represent our whole extraction space using this modeling. At this stage, so this template is only helped for the mapping. Once the mapping is established, we can throw out this template. So as of now, you don't have any explicit skeletons over there. The whole extraction space is already rigged. So the pose information, the shape information is already encoded in the extraction space itself. And from PyFu, because we apply PyFu on this extraction space, from PyFu cannot see what's going on there. From PyFu's view, it is as if it's extracting in some space. So PyFu has no knowledge of the pose variations or shapes, but it just tries to extract in the space. So this shape estimation is only visible to this rigging. And after this rigging is done, the following extraction pipelines do not have to be visible to this explicit features, and that's how we design it.
Thank you very much. A very nice talk, and you were very much on time today. And I can also see that there could be a lot of different applications for this method. Very nice work.
Thank you.
Zing, I have a question. What about relighting? Are you able to relight the models? And yeah.
All right. So this comes to when it comes to relighting. So first, it depends on the shape and the texture. When it comes to the shape, we extracted the possible shape, so that problem is solved. So it's mostly about the texture. Since we extracted a shape with texture, so if we in PyFu work, we extracted the texture of the light texture of the current input, and that work is really hard to relight because it's not albedo. In Arch, because we extracted in the canonical space, we train out our network to predict the colors that's from the albedo texture. And when Arch is done, the reconstruct texture will be already in albedo space. And you can use that albedo to relight in graphics pipelines. And that's one approach. Another way of thinking of that is that maybe we do not need a traditional rendering pipeline here. We can use a neural network to do the relighting thing. And since PyFu and Arch all represent implicitly in the space, we can train a neural render that renders from that implicit space and use that neural render to do the relighting. So those could be the two solutions.
Thank you. One other question. You know, at the end, you were talking about being able to put this into personal devices. I'm wondering what are the obstacles and how are you going to overcome them to make this so that it's efficient enough to run on a mobile device or on an augmented reality headset or something like that?
So first is the good engineering. Since the whole extraction pipeline is fully parallel, we really need to unleash the potential of the parallel computing, and that requires some really fundamental low-level programming. And I believe an experienced engineer would be able to implement that. And also, in order to deploy to mobile devices, we might somehow really want to compress our networks so that it can meet the performance of mobile devices. And then there will be the development of hardware themselves. So as of now, I do not see any technical difficulties of deploying this to mobile devices. I would rather regard this as more of an engineering problem.
Okay, great. So I'd like to open up to, if the committee doesn't have any more questions, I'd like to open it up to the rest of the audience who is out there, if they have any questions for Zeng.
No, I'm really proud of you, Zeng. I'm blown away by the volumetric teleportation. I already started tweeting it.
Thank you, thank you. I retweet yours.
Really good job. Really good.
Copy your image. Thank you.
Yeah. Actually, Zeng told me that a few weeks ago. He said, "Yeah, I want to pull this off," and I was like, "Sure, let's do it." But I wasn't sure how good it is, but
and I wanted to make sure that is within half an hour.
Yes. No, good job. Good job.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, I think what we'll do is I'm going to try to create a breakout room for the committee just to have a discussion. And I've not done a breakout room before, so if I fail, I will try to get back to you. But Zhang, if you could hold on, we're going to have a little in-committee discussion before we can continue. Thank you. And let me see if I can do this. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Oh boy. We'll try this again. Sorry about that.
I think the other's already there.
Yeah, I put them there. I didn't put myself in there. That's a problem. I'm going to close them and I'm going to start again. So just a second. Yeah, you got amateur hour here. Usually I have somebody else
Setting this up for you.
yeah, controlling stuff. So it's my first time. Sorry about that.
How it works. Yeah.
Sorry about that, Zhang.
It's okay.
You'll have time to talk to all of your fans out there while we're meeting. So
Thought I had a chance to look and it seems like my lab mates. Oh, Sergey, how are you?
I'm great. I mean, amazing presentation.
Thank
I'm
you.
thinking we should all have similar tools.
We came back from breakout session.
sorry about that. I'm going to do it again here. Okay.
Okay.
I forgot to put myself in the room.
Okay, I see.
There was also a 1 minute timer for some reason.
Yeah. I don't see myself here. Shoot. Well, that's weird.
Hey, Zheng.
Mhm.
You see the so I actually posted a couple of days ago this like really cool virtual presentation of this like UW prof, with the chalkboard. I don't know if you've seen that on Facebook.
Not sure if I saw that.
Yeah, he actually made a presentation where he's actually writing on a glass board.
Oh,
And
wow.
there's actually a link below where he's explaining how that works. Right? It's actually really impressive because it's really effective. It's as if he had like the whiteboard in front of you, and it looks like he's writing backwards. But it's just the camera that's being flipped. But his setting.
Did he wear a glove?
Huh?
Did he wear a capture glove, or is it just simply hand tracking?
No. There's no computer graphics. It's actually really simple. Basically, he's in front of a glass wall, and he's writing, and then he has some fluorescent lighting that actually makes the whatever he writes visible. And so it's a math prof actually that's showcasing that. And then there's a link below where they have this like do-it-yourself thing that explains people how to do the setting. So I was thinking that you could actually do the same with what you have right now.
Yep.
And you could basically open source your technology, and then people can do a similar thing as well.
Oh, I got it in the chat room. Thank you.
Okay, so how do I add myself? I see everybody else. I see the list of the other committee members. I don't see my name where I can add it to the room. That's weird. Okay. This is lame. Huh. No.
Or maybe you just create a new channel, or everyone leaves.
Yeah, they could do that. And if everybody leaves, then we'll just stay here. And Zheng, I'll call you or something, or send you an email when you can rejoin us.